the meeting to order. Mrs. Weber, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Ballard is absent. Mrs. Bitter.
Here.
Mr. Comerford.
Here.
Dr. Steger.
Here.
And Mrs. Weiss.
Here.
Could you please stand and join me in the saying of the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we start our meeting today, I'd like to remind all that the 5 board members were elected to represent our community, which consists of 5,675 students, approximately 820 staff members, and approximately 35,000 community members. We use our mission and vision to guide us. I'd like to read our mission and vision. Our mission is to cultivate a culture of academic excellence through inclusive and innovative learning opportunities for the whole child. Our vision is to empower all learners to reach their full potential in a globally competitive world. As we conduct our business today, I would ask that we do so in a respectful manner. While we may not always agree on every topic, we want to assure you that each of us wants to do what's best for our district and our community. Could I have ask for the approval, a motion to approve the agenda, which includes addendum items for the superintendent's agenda number 14 and for personnel consent agenda items 1.1 and 2GG.
Second.
Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
Mr. Comerford.
Aye.
Dr. Steger.
Aye.
Thank you. Next, I would seek a motion for the approval of the minutes from our last board meeting.
So moved. Second.
Mrs. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Dr. Steger.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
And Mr. Comerford.
Aye. Mrs. Weber, can you please provide an overview of the protocol for today's meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Comerford. Good morning, everyone here today, as well as those of you who are attending virtually. For those of you who are attending virtually, if you would like to access a copy of today's agenda and addendum, they are available on the Board of Education page of our district website. The minutes that were just approved will also be posted on that website. For those of you who wish to address the board in our public participation, please send those requests to our today's moderator, Bill Fritz, at fritzw@sycamoreschools.org. We do have a chat feature available in the meeting. We ask that you use that only for technical issues and not for comments to be sent to the board. So with that, I think we are ready to start today's meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Weber. Do we have any requests for public participation?
Mr. Comerford, I did receive a virtual or a request from Jacob Rounds. I don't know if he wanted to address the board virtually.
I don't believe he's on.
Virtual attendance today.
I don't think he's
I don't see him up.
Okay, so we'll follow back up with him and see if he might rather address the board at our next board.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Weber. Moving on to superintendent's agenda, Mr. Lewis, item number 1, master facility plan update.
Yeah, we'll have Mr. Lovell, and this is where we'll jump in if needed, but Mr. Lovell will give you a brief update about exciting news with the H Green.
Yeah, absolutely. So good morning, members of the board. Typically, we do our big master facility plan updates in the evenings, but I thought since we're inching along really close to green, we'd give kind of a high-level overview of where we're at with the progress. If you haven't been on Aldine lately, driving through there, you'll notice that demolition has begun. It is a multi-step, multi-phase process of bringing the building down, removing the metals, removing all the concrete, and then backfilling that property. And so a huge shout out to our neighbors who are the most patient of neighbors in the community, have dealing with a lot of motion, especially this summer in the dry heat. We're working a lot with our construction company to ensure that we're keeping the dust to a minimum, but I know it's a disruption to them and they've been phenomenal. We remain in very close communication with many of them to make sure that everything's going well over there. But a few things I just want to point out with Green. First off, currently, like I'd mentioned, demolition is in progress. We did receive phase 1 of our temporary occupancy. What that means is that we are able to start moving in furniture. And so our furniture that we have both purchased and stored will begin on actually July 5th, so yesterday, between July 5th and July 22nd, I believe. And so again, that's going to kind of be phased as we begin to move into the administrative areas, because that's the first staff that we need to move into the building. And then we'll head all the way back to the academic areas as well. There are still some areas that do not have flooring at the moment. So we need to begin you'll see in the 2-week look ahead of the media, the dining, all that flooring being installed. So obviously we can't move furniture into those areas until that flooring's been down. Protective flooring is being removed in the academic areas. So we put temporary flooring over the new flooring, obviously to protect it. So what happens is that protective flooring comes up, and then we have a deep cleaning company come in and start to really clean those areas significantly. Some other 2-week look aheads in there, the music areas, remember that's the renovated area. We're starting to do some drywall hanging, the CMU walls have gone up. Those areas are starting to look more defined. The installation of the gym equipment, the painting of the gyms and things like that. I mentioned already the dining and media flooring, and then the final paint in academic areas. So similar to any construction of a home, you go through, you paint it, you do the deep clean, and then you go back through and you're doing the touch-up paints in those areas and things like that. And then you're going to see some topsoil movement on the back half of the property around the parking areas and the bus area as well. Again, most of the work that most people are going to be seeing is going to be in the front of the building, not in the back of the building. The last thing I do want to mention is I'd mentioned it's the phase 1 of the temporary occupancy. There's multiple phases of that. So the next phase will be giving us the ability to get into that building to begin setting things up. And so then we'll finally march towards that permanent occupancy. It all looks good. Everything feels good. I always like the disclaimer to say it's going to be a tight squeeze into the new year. So we just have to be very aware of that. We've told the teams. We've got a phenomenal team over at EH Green we're working with in lockstep, so it'll be good. Any questions about the progress over there?
When do we think that teachers will be able to get into their classrooms? Maybe, or.
Wow, that's a bold question for a Wednesday morning.
I was gonna ask the same one.
Yeah. So I'm going to be somewhat non-committal on that one because it has a lot to do with our ability to get the furnitures in there and things like that and really work towards that full occupancy permit. What I've been trying to tell people is that Sims, we got our final occupancy the Friday before kids came on that Monday. I think we'll be better than that. But I'm telling people just to be ready for something that tight.
And we have all the furniture that has been secured, right?
Yeah, all the furniture's been secured. One of the things that we do have in this phase that we didn't have over at Sims is all of our cabinetry is in. If you remember, we opened Sims without sinks and cabinets in many of the rooms because they hadn't come in yet. We don't have that issue here. This is really going to be, this project's more going to come down to site development, parking, life support, elevators, things like that, that we just have to navigate and get through. Nothing with furniture or furnishings or things like that.
Mr. Lovell, could I jump in on that? So regarding the teachers having time to get their classrooms put together, one of the things that we did with the calendar just for the grade school teachers, similar to what we did with Sims last year, is we gave them the opportunity to take their teacher work days and move them earlier in the month of August, as opposed to when the rest of the district is doing them. They'll still be with all of us on our professional learning days, but those teacher work days, which are designed for teachers to put their rooms together and time for them to do whatever they need to do individually to prepare, we've given the grade school teachers the option to do those earlier in the month so they can get all those things taken care of and not feel like they're squeezed right before kids are coming to get those things done.
And then cafeteria, dining, everything's gonna be a go, it's clear.
Yeah, the kitchen's actually set up in there, so it's ready to go. We have the equipment, the walk-in coolers, everything's all set. The only thing left really is the flooring in there, and then obviously bringing in the cafeteria tables and things like that. So
I'm gonna ask this for kids, playground equipment, when will that be up and running for the
kids? That's a great question. So we actually shifted the design of the playground somewhat last minute. It was a no-cost change order. So the original playground was slated to be in the back of the building along the homes for Hagawad. It wasn't ideal for the school from a flow standpoint with kids getting to the playground, and it's obviously was not great for our neighbors. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to shift the playground kind of to the south side, well, that would be the southwest side of the gym, so the back side. And so we have all the playground equipment, it's in, we're just waiting for the builders come in and kind of slope that side there and then put the playground equipment in. So it's a much better space for the playground, but it delayed the installation of it a bit.
I think it's important to always note that this is one of those things, because construction and how things operate are unpredictable. So I think it's always important when you have an asterisk by it that,
Yes.
like saying the kitchen's gonna be perfect the first day of school, we can't guarantee that. I think you always have that, you're gonna have growing pains, there's gonna be things that they have to come back in and, it's, you said it really well, Mr. Lovell, it's kind of like the 12-month or 11-month walkthrough when you build a new home. We'll have that 11th month walkthrough the whole year. Contractors will have to come back in and fix little things and nuances and, make repairs as needed, but it'll be minor. It's just those tweaks that have to kind of happen throughout to make sure things operate the way we want.
And Sims is a great example. If you remember, we had to come back in over Thanksgiving break and build a wall in the cafeteria. So they're just things that they could have tried to force the wall in there, but it would have been a mess for the kids. And they said, well, why don't we hold off? It's not necessary. So there are going to be things like that across Green that's an active, we keep telling folks, remember, it's an active construction site through November. Because of the remodel and the renovation and the site development and things like that. So we just have to be patient, but it's a phenomenal space. When you walk through it, you can't help be amazed. Not just by the architectural look at it, but the academic environmental spaces that the kids and the staff's going to have. I mean, what our community has invested in is absolutely impressive. I can't wait for the community to be able to walk through and see these spaces. And so again, growing pains, we'll get through it, but once people lay their eyes, I just can't wait to be there the first day when the kids walk in there and their eyes are just like, I mean, comparatively speaking, where they're coming from, I mean, it's going to be incredible.
Speaking of the community walking through, do we have a plan or a timetable for when the community would be able to walk through the building?
Yeah, so we're working with Ms. Brombyte on that one, can't talk this morning. And one of the things that we want to make sure we do is we do it when the building is complete and there's enough parking. So we're looking at October-ish to be able to have kind of a community walkthrough. Obviously, our EH Green families are going to be walking through it as they transition in and things like that, but a full community, I think we should look at sometime in October when we'll be able to invite the community in.
One more quick question,
Sure.
since I do live in the neighborhood. People have been asking me, is there going to be another track for them to walk on at the site? And I don't know the answer, so I just want to ask out.
There's not a replicated track of what we had. We do have, we are bringing back in the sidewalk that's coming over from Stonehenge and back around. So you'll be able to make it around the property. Because if you remember, there's now the site of the parking on the back side, and it all connects around to that plus side. So it kind of provides a natural walking path, but not a defined one.
And I would say, Mrs. Spencer and I were walking back from the parade, and we noticed that not only does it connect to Green, but it connects back to the sidewalk to Mapledale. So you can actually, it's a more like a walking trail or path versus a track, so to speak.
Right.
But I did hear Mr. Tudor talk about potentially looking at that with the PTO, but that would be something down the road. And they have to have the proper approvals, because, when I look at the site, I don't know where it's gonna go. Because the green space where it was is much smaller. I don't think the residents would be very happy if we put it in the front yard. Because that's the only other space that I know exists is where we were going to put a baseball field and decided against putting a baseball field. So it's just green space, but it literally is almost in somebody's backyard.
Which means some significant landscaping. It's a bigger project.
Okay, I wanted to ask.
But I think it's a great question.
What about, I know that you said that the teachers might not get in until
close to school start date, will Green still have the Green 101 for the students so that they can go in and see it? How will that work for the families of kids that will be attending there?
Yes.
And it won't just, obviously, it will be all the kids, even sixth graders, it will be new to them as well. So is there some plan for that?
There is. We've been working with the building administration, and we've been working with Braybach to allow us to be able to have those opportunities. There's different levels of occupancy when we talk about phased-in occupancy. So we can have folks at some levels of occupancy in the building. We just can't have classes being held and things like that. So we can welcome folks in at a certain point to be able to do those types of things. But then actually having school during the day is a different level of occupancy. So we've been working closely with them. We feel confident about that. We actually had a meeting 2 weeks ago that Mr. Tudor had brought that up, and we were talking through that. So Braybach's been phenomenal. Obviously what we all want to make sure is that we are not jeopardizing our occupancy certificate. So we're walking that line, working closely with our contractors to make sure we're ready.
So the kids, so for example, if on Green 101, they don't necessarily go to their actual classroom. If they were going to be assigned to the orange team, for Green 101, you're not going in and seeing the orange team. You're going in and walking around and seeing the areas, right? It's not
As of
just-
now, I think that that's kind of the high level where we're going to be. Our hope is that we'll be able to get them into their actual academic areas.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
Lovell.
my pleasure.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Moving on to item number 2, can I have a motion for the change order of Sims Elementary School renovation project GMP number 4?
So moved.
Second,
As you can see, it's the credit at the end of both projects.
like it.
I'll take it.
Even at the amount it is, it's still a credit.
Any questions from the
We
board?
needed it to bring it into budget.
Yes.
Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Dr. Steger.
Oh, this is better.
Mrs. Bitterly. Okay.
Sorry.
Am I correct?
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Comerford.
Aye.
Dr. Steger.
Aye.
Agenda item number 3, change order Sycamore High School exterior athletics early site package GMP 3A and campus parking early site package 3B. Can I have a motion for this? Further approval of this agenda item, this change order?
So moved.
Mr. Lovell, our favorite topic.
I was just going to say, this is our favorite topic, soil stabilization. That's exactly what that is.
That's why we all got into education, isn't
Right,
it?
there's only one, other than Green and backfilling the building and all that, there's only one more out here. We had to do some field stuff about a week ago, so just give you a heads up on that. It should be significant, but this is just soil stabilization of it.
Any questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Dr. Steger.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
And Mr. Comerford.
Aye. Can I have a motion for the approval of the change order Sycamore High School Stadium Phase 1 completion package GMP 3C?
So moved.
Second.
Exact same thing. Our concessions will be on wonderful soil.
Any questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
Mr. Comerford.
Aye.
Dr. Steger.
Aye.
Can I have a motion for the approval of change orders Sycamore Junior High construction project?
So moved.
Second.
I just want to call out on the first one on 85. These were some updates that we wanted to make to some of the cabinetry. After they designed the cabinets and they looked at where they were going, our music team looked at it. And it actually, where they were located, didn't give space for our percussion to actually be in the room in that area. And so it didn't work. And so this was a scope revision and moving the cabinets. It's not adding additional, it was just relocating in specific areas. We are at the place at the junior high, though, that we are starting to really hold firm on no more changes as it relates to shifting and changing of spaces, cabinetry, furniture, because we are at that moment where things are starting to get installed. So this is hopefully one of the last remaining ones.
Is there enough storage for band and music for, in theater?
The one thing I've learned, Dr. Sager, is there's never enough storage.
Okay, I'm just asking. I'm just wondering if that's gonna be
But-
coming at us in the next couple of weeks.
Well,
No, I mean, I think that, we've worked really hard with SHP. They have seen this over and over for years. Our music teams, they influence the decision. Just like at the high school, you get in there, you live in your space for a year and you start to see things. So I'm never going to say never, but I feel like we've done a phenomenal job of making sure they have what they need to be able to start their year.
Thank you.
that was gonna be my comment, was just a huge credit to Mr. Lovell and his team for listening to the expert voices that are in the departments and, spending that extra time. It is, I know being on that end of it, it's very frustrating because there's always people wanting to change. But, we do not have to live in the space, they do.
Yeah.
And they have to make sure it works for their needs and their student needs. And they have been heavily involved in the planning from 2016 to now. Of designing the theater, designing the music spaces, making sure that it has and meets their needs, to the point where we moved mirrors, we moved, difference, the way they wanted it set up. And if you listen to the teachers, they'll tell you their spaces turned out because of,
Yeah.
we weren't designing the rooms for them individually, we were designing rooms for what's best for the department and the music department as a whole. So, Dr. Ewing and his team deserve a lot of credit for all of their work.
When you talk about experts, I mean, they are
Oh,
the
yes.
experts. So, I mean, a lot of it just goes over my head. Oh, okay, yeah. But I think what we all realize, and when you move into a new house, you live in it for 6 months to a year, and everything's conceptual. It's floor plans, it's things like that. And when you start walking in space and you actually see the size of it, that's when we have to have some conversations. But again, we're at that point in the project, and based on our budget at the moment, we're at that point in the project where we're just going to have to get into it, live in it, and then have conversations down the line about what we want to do. But I mean, again, comparatively speaking, what we're coming from to where we're going, they're phenomenal spaces, and they're a massive upgrade. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lovell. Any other questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Dr. Studer.
Aye.
Can I have a motion to approve the construction change directives, EH Green Intermediate Construction Project?
So moved. Second.
at the beginning of the project, there wasn't a lot of scope of work with the HVAC units in that area. We were replacing the HVAC, but we weren't necessarily going to replace the ducts and things like that in that renovated space. And once they got up there and started really looking at the returns, both for energy efficiency, the size based on the new units and things like that, they realized that they needed to go through and replace many of those ducts or review them. And so again, the air distribution and things like that. So these change directives just give us the ability up to those amounts to be able to flex and use and redevelop those areas as needed.
Any questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter. Aye. Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Dr. Studer.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to agenda item number 7, the authorization to bid transportation facility. Can I have a motion to approve item number 7?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Lovell?
Sure, so if you remember at the last meeting, hopefully, we saw the plans for the new facility. We continue to move forward with great progress, and so this is just the next step to be able to follow our time frame and get this project out to bid.
Any questions from the board?
Are we still waiting on any environmental impact?
Yeah, we actually got good news. Gosh, it was in the week last week that everything kind of cleared the Corps of Engineers. And so we're just waiting for our paperwork to show up within, they say within the next 30 days, but it should be quicker than that. So once we have that, Mrs. Weber and I have been working closely with legal to ensure that our ground lease paperwork is getting ready to go. So things are really falling into place. We've got a tentative timeline for the entire scope of the project from our architectural firm. So once we get that approval from environmental, we get our land lease and we get this bid, it's all kind of lining up the pieces. Our hope is by July of 23, we have a fully functioning compound and operation over on that site.
Mr. Lovell, just to add, I believe that our intent would be to bring the bid for approval to the board's August morning meeting. so
Yes.
August 3rd.
Yeah, so that, the morning meeting in August is the plan. Obviously, it's kind of tricky because we can't really bid out on a project that we don't have the land. So we're trying to make sure that we're getting the environmental done, we're getting the lease done in order to put this out the bid. Since we're not fully owning that property, we're going to be leasing it, but we believe pretty strongly that all the pieces will fall into place and we should be good.
Once they fall into place and you bid it, what is the window of time for the bid?
I don't
We
have
get
that.
everything in line. Is it a relatively quick turnaround so that we can get it to that August?
Yes, as soon as
It is
we,
quick.
as soon as we get the authorization from you, that will allow the architect firm to be able to put this out on the street. I think it has to be at least 2 notifications of the public for 2 weeks in a row. So the least it could be would be 2 weeks, but I think that they'll probably give it a little bit more time.
Our plan is to be moving dirt on that site at the end of August. That's our kind of moving towards that goal. Pre-engineered metal buildings are still a significant lead time. That's going to be our biggest issue. We'll have the site done, but getting the building out there is going to take some time. I've been hearing that HVAC systems lead times are significantly long too. So again, everything that we're managing with all these other projects, we're going to have to manage with this. But the good news is that our 3 big pieces are really coming together right now. So it's good.
Mr. Lovell. Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, Mrs. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Dr. Steger?
Aye.
Mr. Comerford?
Aye.
And Mrs. Bitter?
Aye.
Motion passes. Now a motion to approve the item number 8, school resource officer contract, City of Montgomery.
Second.
This is a typical school resource officer contract with the city of Montgomery. We've partnered with them for a number of years on the high school. And then you might recall a couple of years ago, we decided to look at a partnership with the junior high. The high school, Mrs. Weber, correct me if I'm wrong on percentage, but I believe at the high school, we have a 60-40 split, 60% Sycamore, 40% City of Montgomery for officer training. And then at the junior high, it's a 50-50 split. But, very thankful that the City of Montgomery assigned the school resource officers work for that other 50% to really be in the office at the building. So both of them are essentially there 100% of the time during the school year. So it's a huge partnership with the City of Montgomery. We really appreciate their support. And, we look forward to continuing this work with them to support our students, and they build great relationships with our students. And that's where it starts in the school building, making sure that students understand that our police officers are there to help them and assist them. I think they serve in multiple roles, not only just as a police officer, but as an advisor and someone that helps students with those resources. So.
Officer Payne gets more hugs at graduation than anyone that I've ever seen. He's clearly doing good work. Mr. Lewis, I just want to follow up. Someone actually asked me this question, so I just want to keep it clarified. So this is what has been in place in the past, and then we're continuing that.
Yeah, it's
This
the
is the
same, other than a new set of dates.
And I would also mention that this is running a parallel track for approval. So tonight at the city council, they have this in front of them as well. So it's obviously both ends have to approve it, but we've worked on it in the terms and identical other than cost to the last one.
I think it's important to point out, just if you're a community member and you see this, it's like, well, why don't you have a partnership with the city of Blue Ash for that? The 2 largest schools are in the city of Montgomery, and that's where we've chosen to have school resource officers. I think, with the recent school shootings and things of that nature, it's heightened the awareness around the need for having our police officers in support. I want to say very clearly, the city of Blue Ash also provides tremendous support for our buildings, even though we don't have stationed school resource officers. They are in our buildings all the time. They patrol our parking lot. They will just park in front of the building and go walk through the building and get familiar. We're doing a full-scale exercise this summer with them in one of our buildings. So we'll get, as that comes closer, we'll announce that so people don't lose them. We don't want people to get upset when it'll be on a Saturday, so, but they do a tremendous job as well. And, they were here yesterday for a meeting. We were meeting with some community members that had some concerns about school safety, and one of the sergeants was here in office with us, talking about that support. He had just come off of a shift working at Summit Park until 1 a.m. and was back in the office by 7 a.m. So, Sergeant Cho, thank you for being here, because that's not easy. So, but we appreciate all, and Hamilton County Sheriff's Office does a phenomenal job supporting us as well. So, they all sit on our district safety team, our Safe and Secure Schools committee, as well as our fire departments from all municipalities, Sims Township, Loveland Fire Department, and also both City of Blue Ash and the City of Montgomery sit on it as well. So,
Just to reiterate and clarify, so even though this just says Montgomery and we also talk about Blue Ash, it also includes our elementary school SIM, which is not covered under those two jurisdictions. These are covered through the Hamilton County
Sheriff's Office controls that and takes good care of us out there at Sims. And actually, their substation's not far away, so right across the street.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, Mrs. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Dr. Steger.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
And Mr. Comer.
Aye. Motion passes. I'd like to ask for the motion to approve item number 9, student support services agreement.
So moved.
Second.
And if you don't mind, Mr. Comfort, I'm just going to talk about this globally over 9, 10, and 11. That way we don't have to talk about it in each item. So the City of Montgomery and the City of Blue Ash and Sycamore Schools partner. This is an annual agreement that we look at for the services of Jeff Tallman, who does tremendous support for our students, mentorship, guidance, counseling support, really early intervention, kind of juvenile support. So kind of that 5-8 grade man. So there's been a shared agreement where we pick up a percentage and then both cities pick up a percentage of his total cost. So thankful for their support in continuing this agreement. We review it annually. This year, there was no increase in cost to that agreement. So, and both municipalities gladly said they would support this going forward. So we do check in with them every year to make sure that that support is available. But Mr. Tallman does a great job intervening with our students and really providing that additional support in addition to the already tremendous supports that we have in place.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions from the board? For item number 9, Ms. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Dr. Steger.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
And Mr. Comer.
Aye. Can I have a motion to approve item number 10, student support services, City of Blue Ash?
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Dr. Steger.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
And Mr. Comer.
Aye. Can I have a motion to approve item number 11, student support services, City of Montgomery?
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter. Aye. Mr. Comer.
Aye.
And Dr. Steger.
Aye.
Motion passes. Can I have a motion to approve item number 12, contract with Maxim Healthcare Services?
So moved.
Second.
You can see in the item, talks about nursing supports and services for students with disabilities per their IEPs. And see the total estimated cost. Obviously, Mrs. Spencer is here. If you have any particular questions about this or any of the upcoming items in the list of items.
It's definitely that time of year. when
It's
you're ready
that
for
time
the
of
end.
year.
Yes.
Mrs. Spencer, do you know how many students that contract will be covering? 2 students. 2 students. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Dr. Studer.
Aye.
Motion passes. Can I have a motion to approve item number 13, the contract for St. Rita's School for the Deaf?
So moved.
Second. This is a placement for one student, who is a student who has some significant, hearing difficulties.
Any questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Dr. Studer.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter. Aye. And Mr. Comer.
Aye. Motion passes. Can I have a motion to approve item number 14, which is revised in the addendum, the contract for the Cincinnati Center for Autism?
So moved. Second.
This contract is for placement of two students who are receiving their educational services at Cincinnati Center for Autism as per their team decision.
Any questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Dr. Studer.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
And Mr. Comer.
Aye. Motion passes. Can I have a motion to approve item number 15, the contract for Langsford Learning?
So moved.
Second.
This is an approval for an agreement with Langsford to provide reading instruction, direct reading instruction for one student.
Any questions from the board?
Could have asked these questions for every single one of these, but just in general, I realize these are always individual IEP team decisions. Are we as a district unable to meet the needs here, and that's why they're going to these, to this particular center? Our teachers are unable to provide this particular intervention, is that why they're going there, or what is the reason why we're not doing this work here? with our
Just
teachers?
in general, IEP team decisions, we first look at whether or not we can provide those resources for students or programming for students. And if we cannot, and then we can't contract to have those services come in, then we do look at outside placements or outside centers to provide that instruction.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Any other questions? Mrs. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Dr. Studer.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
And Mr. Comer.
Aye. Motion passes. Can I have a motion to approve item number 16, the contract for EDU healthcare?
So moved.
Second.
This contract is for one-on-one nursing for one student who has a disability. And whenever we have one-on-one nurses, it is per doctor's order that they have a one-to-one nurse. That is not an IEP team decision necessarily, it's a medical necessity. So
Any questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Dr. Studer.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
And Mr. Comer.
Aye, motion passes. Can I have a motion to approve item number 17, the contract for Katie Masadi?
second. So this contract is for instructional services to be provided to a student who is receiving all of their programming via home lab instruction.
Any questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Dr. Studer.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye,
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
motion passes. Can I have a motion to approve item number 18, contract for Terry Messerschmidt?
So moved.
Second.
This contract is to support extended school year services that a student requires to address speech and language issues.
Any questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Dr. Studer.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye. And I have a motion to approve item number 19, contract for Cincinnati Occupational Therapy Institute Incorporated.
So moved. Second.
This contract is to support two students during the school year who attend Valley Voices and also require occupational therapy services. I first looked at whether or not it would be prudent to send one of our occupational therapists to provide these services, but concluded based on the cost for that and the impact on time, it would be more cost effective to go with their provider, which is the Cincinnati Occupational Therapy Institute.
Any questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Dr. Stever.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
And Mr. Comer.
Aye, motion passes. Today, I guess item number 20, Mr. Lewis.
Did you say you want a motion on that? Or you want some approval?
I,
Hey, Mr. Contra, you're doing a great job.
thank you.
We're here to support you. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about this item, and certainly anytime that our community and our students and our teachers feel some disruption to the norm, we want to be transparent. We want to talk with them. We want to make sure they hear from us. And so the principal changes that we've recently undergone at the high school and the junior high in Green, I know it can be unsettling to some, but what I would say is that it's not uncommon for our district. We are a sought after district. We grow leaders and give them opportunities to grow outside of their current positions that they hold to the point where they become very marketable and very sought after by other districts. So as much as it is difficult and maybe the timing is not perfect when all three of them happen close to the same time, but we can't be upset that our leaders get growth opportunities to be able to get promotional opportunities. So when one is leaving to be a superintendent, one is leaving to be an assistant superintendent of HR, and then another one is moving to a larger building that has an opportunity to lead a larger staff to set herself up for other leadership opportunities. Again, we want to support them, we're proud of them, and we want them to continue to grow in their leadership journey. The other thing I would say is there's only so many opportunities here within the district. We're not a 10,000 student district with multiple district office positions. We're actually fairly lean at a district office level. So if that's their desire and their interest to grow into a district leader, you can't just sit and wait. And when those opportunities come up, you do have to look and make that opportunity available to yourself and open yourself up to an opportunity outside of the district. It's no secret that, I've known these leaders. I've worked here 10 years. Our three leaders worked here 76 years. Again, strange, but all in a line there. And it's not an unusual thing for them to start seeking out those opportunities. And I believe, knowing each leader as well as I did for the last few years, they were getting, I always call that leadership antsiness. You start to get to the point where you're ready to do something different. You're ready to take on a potential new leadership challenge. And that's what I saw from all three leaders. What I would say is, the other thing is we support our leaders in that growth journey. I've had the opportunity, I'll use Mr. Tudor as an example. Mr. Tudor and I got to see each other on his last day, which was last Thursday, and gave me a huge hug, and we were both about in near tears because that's the thing. You work so closely together and you build those relationships. And I told him I'm looking forward to having lunch with you next summer to hear about your year because he's going to have a new challenge and a new opportunity to lead. The other thing that I think we hope is that we've set ourselves up is that not only do we have leaders that are desired by other districts, but we're a desired destination for leaders seeking out that growth. Some of the leaders that we hired this summer already said how amazing it is being here, how they can already see the clear vision and mission that they desired and wanted in their career, and they see a path to help them grow as a leader. So Again, that's our job. That's what we're supposed to be doing. So, we've been fortunate enough to already hire Mr. Porter, who's excited about that new leadership challenge and that journey. We're really close on identifying a junior high principal candidate. We start the EH Green journey today. The other thing I wanted to share with the board and with the community is that our process is the same for all of these leadership changes. We typically start, obviously we put the posting up and start to draw interest. We do a lot of background look into all the applications and we make some selections on who we're going to bring through an interview process. We have a 3-round interview process. It starts with a screening round, typically, depending on the job and who's available, it's usually me, Dr. Davis, and then often it's Mrs. Wagner or some other team member if she's not available. Sometimes Dr. Davis and I'll do it by ourselves if Mrs. Wagner's available. But we do that screening round to kind of narrow down the numbers because as you can imagine with our postings draw a lot of interest and get a wide variety of candidates. The second round then is a building round. We bring in leaders from the building, teachers, teaching staff members, department leaders. In recent rounds, we've had parents and students sit in and vet the candidates and kind of give us their perspective. And then typically the last round is a district round where our district leadership team, and then depending on lately with the tightness of the timeline, sometimes we'll bring in other principals to sit in on the interview process. But this most recent one with the junior high, we had to combine rounds to a degree. We had to kind of push it together and have everyone in the room, which makes for an intimidating presence for a candidate walking in and around this U shape filling up the whole room. But what it tells me is, if you're not ready to interview in this district with 16 people, you're probably not ready to lead one of our buildings because it is intense, and we do have very engaged parents and very engaged students, and the students that have sat in really have asked great questions and really challenged our leaders, which has been good to watch. So I think it helps you know that you're moving into a job that you better be on your game every single minute of every single day. So that's typically our process. The other thing that we do is we do listening sessions. Every opening and vacancy, I've done listening sessions with staff members. With the high school, I had a little more time, so I was able to do some in-person sessions and virtual sessions, which were fairly well attended by the high school staff. With most recent changes, I've had to do virtual. I would say the staff turnout has been great. The parent turnout has not been great at any of the sessions. I had an in-person session at the high school, 6 people showed up, and I had a virtual session, which I thought would have been more well attended, but it was actually free. So, but you take the feedback of what you can get, right? The other thing that was interesting at the high school, I was able to do a student session, but it was on one of the exam days. I think 2 students showed up in person and another one came late. And then I asked the students, since they were standing there, I said, would virtual, like a option where you get to respond to me via a survey, be better? And they said, yeah, I think Mr. Lewis, that would be better. And they were like shocked that no one was there. And I said, well, you guys are a credit to 2 out of the 1,600 really came and wanted to be a part. But when I sent out the survey, we were able to get 50 responses in about 30 minutes. So I mean, if you meet students where they are, right? And then if we, even with the staff turnout, I want to give staff members to make sure their voice is heard. So I've sent out surveys to the staff, even after we've had the listening sessions again, to collect that feedback, because all of that feedback helps us develop a profile of what are we looking for in a candidate. It's been a good process. We've used this process for Sims, Mapledale, high school, and now junior high and Green. And it has worked out well for us. So again, we are proud of our leaders. We're happy that they're challenging themselves by taking on new roles, but our work doesn't stop because people leave. And while we're sad and we certainly respect and appreciate their work, we have to move on and find the next leaders that are going to take us down the path of success for our strategic plan and our district goals. So That's what we're seeking. And so my only concern, I would say overall, is the green school process is really tight. The timeline is really tight. And with us not being able to have another board meeting other than Thursday before the July 10th deadline, it'll determine whether or not we can move forward this year or have to look at an interim position, because if someone's in a current contract and we were to be interested in them, their district does not have to let them out of their contract after July. So that may cause us some angst, but we'll see. I didn't want to say that and just jump right to an interim without giving it a try and working through a process. So we'll see what happens, and I will certainly keep the board up to date on that process. But by this afternoon, we should have a candidate two for the junior high that would be prepared for approval tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions from the board?
I have something I just want to read for the public and for the board in general. In the past 6 months, Sycamore has experienced the regretted losses of Ms. Molly Bernansky and Mr. Clay Lavercombe, both assistant principals at the junior high school, of Dr. Regina Stoddard, preschool director, of Mr. Doug Bader, high school principal, of Dr. Tracy Ray, junior high school principal, of Mr. Matt Tudor, principal of E.H. Green Intermediate School. I am grateful for their years of unwavering dedication, service, and leadership to our district. Our district has many important positions to fill in the wake of these departures. Moving forward, we need to be deliberate in our selection of qualified candidates. We need to support these new leaders and embrace their leadership styles. Given the sheer proportion of leadership positions, we need to recruit new leaders who can make a difference immediately rather than developmental candidates who think we can grow into their jobs. So that's my feedback.
Thank you, Dr. Steer.
Thank you.
Any other board questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, and I also have something that I'd like to say. Just questions regarding the process. I know that we had this conversation, but I think it's helpful for us to talk about what they were. So for the process, generally speaking, how many applicants are you getting at this time for a principal position in our district? I know it's different for teachers versus principals, but can you just give us a rough average of how
It just
many?
depends on which position you're talking about. So, for a high school position, it could be 20 to 40. For either one of these, it could be roughly the same. And then there's also, I'll say, unofficial applicants that don't want to put their name in the mix because they're a current sitting principal. So when we work them through the process, we won't make them put in their application until they get to the second round if they're cautious of that, because no one wants to harm anyone by kind of looking at the process and seeing if it might be a fit for them. So, with a assistant principal position, we can get 80 applicants. So it just varies depending on the position, but there are also qualified applicants and unqualified applicants. We'll get applications for a principal role that they have never been an assistant principal. So, you kind of have to dig through and decide, okay, what's a qualified applicant versus not.
And then, so to that, this was a shorter time, obviously, this is a shorter time period than we would typically have. So do you think those numbers have been decreased? And if we had done it earlier, would we have gotten more applicants, or do you think that this is like, do you feel okay with the number of applicants that you have received is really what I'm trying to get?
I don't know that I necessarily worry about the number. I worry about the
Number of quality.
I worry about quality. So if we were ever at a point where I didn't think we were getting quality applicants, I wouldn't bring a recommendation for it. So
And what would you do if that happened?
I would just look at it until we can post it and have more time. And that's where, again, we had numerous quality applicants for the junior high. I mean, it was tough to make the trim down to the number we brought forward to an next round. Same thing I feel about E.H. Green right now. The quality of applicants is through the roof. So it's going to be a tough decision to get it down to a manageable number. My worry now is just time frame, being able to meet the time constraints. Because, again, the leaders that left, it is not their fault that they had to make their announcements when they did. They were waiting on other districts. So it wasn't like, oh, we're going to intentionally wait till the last minute to resign. it was literally their processes and the way things were shaking out in other districts just creates, and someone's always gonna have a mess. I mean, to be honest with you, when we hire someone, let's say we hire someone tomorrow, that'll create a mess for someone else. They have 3 days.
Sort of like a domino effect in the time sense of something we can necessarily control.
And that's why eventually someone has to probably look at, you know, what we may need to do for a time.
And if we did hire an interim, when does that would start immediately, but then when would we begin to hire? If it were an ideal world, when would we begin the hiring
I mean,
process for that?
If we had an interim and we knew it was going to be a vacancy, we would post it in January and get ready to go after that. Because really that gives an early indication to people that this is open and we have an opportunity to look. Because the other thing that happens is, you know, there were a lot of interested applicants that had only been in their current districts where they went to for a year. And I totally respect that they didn't want to jump into our process because I want to uphold my commitment of a 2-year contract to this district. And I actually respect that a lot more than people that, you know, jump from place to place looking for the next greatest thing. But because that is hard. If you've only been somewhere a year, you've made a commitment, and they took a chance on you. You want to be there for a 2-year period to show that you're upholding your commitment to that district. So
Is that
a lot of respect.
is that a typical, is a 2-year contract for principals, that's the general, is that the?
That's the pretty much
general
standard.
Standard, okay.
You can give up to 5, but not many districts. do that.
Okay.
Most stay with
So I have a little bit more, but I just want to also, I have a statement that I like to prepare too, because I've spoken with a lot of community members and I want to respect that. So I'd like to cite from our school board policies, the General Assembly has delegated responsibility for the conduct of public schools in each school district to a local school board of education. Boards are political subdivisions of the state of Ohio, and members of the boards are officials elected by the citizens of a district who represent them in the management of the public schools. Under the laws of the state of Ohio, the board acts as the governing body of the public schools. Within the extent of its legal powers, the board has the responsibility for operating the district in accordance with the desires of local citizens who elect its members. This is from policy BBBA, which is in our policy manual. It's under section B, school board governance and operations, legal status, school board powers and duties. As a governing body of this district, we as the board are responsible for the conduct within the district. With these responsibilities, I believe that it is necessary for us to make sure that we fully understand what is causing the simultaneous departure of several key members of our administration. As with any leadership role, it will take time for all of our new administrators to be able to effectively lead these schools. I don't believe that anyone in this room has ever seen that many key members of our administration leave at the same time. To me, this level of disruption is concerning, not only to me, but also to a number of our community members. And I do appreciate all of the information that you're giving us, Mr. Lewis, and I appreciate that and I respect that, and I think that was well done. But I do believe that we also need to know as a board what is happening. And it is in this role as our board that we should exercise our responsibilities in accordance with the desire of our local citizens. As the governing body of this district, we therefore need to make sure that we understand exactly what's causing this. We are hearing this perspective, but I do believe that we do need to also hear the perspectives of the people and the administrators that are leaving. I therefore move to hire an outside HR expert to conduct an independent exit interview with the departing administrators. And once we receive the report, we can decide as a board what needs to be done to prevent such disruptions to our district's effective operation in the future. I move therefore to hire an outside HR expert to conduct an independent exit interview of these individuals. I second that.
Any comments on this motion?
Well, as a board member who's been on this, I think that, thank you, Mrs. Bitter, for going through our policies and reiterating to the community. I think we have to be very cautious here because Mr. Lewis just provided and in other meetings that we've had with the board, we have had very extensive discussions about our hiring process and the timeframes that school districts have to go through in terms of positions that are open, people applying for them, hearing late, and then us responding accordingly. I think that the motion that you just made and that was seconded by Dr. Steger to have a separate investigation is not founded at this time without further discussion with our entire board. And I would say that there has been many conversations that this board has had about this, and explanations have been provided. So to jump to that conclusion, I think is at this point not appropriate until we have our whole board that we can talk about this. And I think that when we hear things from the community, I think it's obviously appropriate as to our mission and vision to be responsive to that. However, I don't think that it is appropriate that a few voices that are expressing concern should make this board jump to that conclusion that you just talked about in your statement.
I don't have a
But,
conclusion.
well, your conclusion is to then make a motion to have something investigated.
I didn't use the word investigation.
I might ask a question on the motion for further clarity. We do have an exit interview process that we do internally that Dr. Davis leads. Is there a reason why we do not trust that process?
That process is optional, and it's my understanding that at least one of the administrators did not do an exit interview. Did the other people who left, those administrators, did they do exit interviews?
Did they all do exit interviews?
Just for clarification, Mrs. Sauer is a school psychologist, not an administrator. So in terms of counting for exit.
3 of them have, 2 of them are scheduled.
So in the thing, Mrs. Bitter, that you proposed, you didn't use the word, I'm sorry, it wasn't investigation, what was it?
To hire an outside expert to conduct the independent exit interview.
Okay, so is it in your proposal, or what you're proposing is that, first of all, I'd like to know how much you're proposing that the district would spend on such a mandatory exit interview with people, and how would you actually make the people that are leaving the district comply with that?
That would be a process that we would have to go through as a board. That's why I'm bringing this up as a discussion. I mean, there are, if this were a corporate board and the middle management of that company left, several significant number of them left at once, it's very common for HR expert companies to come in and do the exit interviews of those people to try to understand for the purpose. I mean, the board has an obligation to understand that. It doesn't mean, it could be many reasons that people leave. There could be several reasons. It could be that they are having challenges with the number of, or the level of construction that we've got going on. It could be that, COVID has taken a major impact on them. It could be several reasons. It could be that they want to move up and they feel that this is a great opportunity for them. There's no preset determination of what these exits and interviews will bring. But the point is that we as a board have an obligation as a board to go through this process for our community to understand this. This is our school district. We are losing several principals at one time. This will make a major impact on our children, on our students, and potentially on our district. And so I am proposing simply, respectfully, I'm proposing that I believe that we as a board should do this. You may disagree with that, and that's your right to do that, but I'm making this proposal today.
Well, back to Mr. Plummer's question. What is it that or why is the process that we currently have in terms of offering an exit interview? What is the issue with that
Because
process?
the issue is, first of all, it's optional. Second of all, if the person is leaving because of something that we as a district are doing, they may not feel comfortable to say it to us. They may need an independent exit interview to find out the actual reason why they are leaving. That is why. It's independent, it's not us asking the question, it's somebody else asking the question. That is why, to keep it objective, and that is very common. It's very common for companies to do outside independent exit interviews. Some people hire it completely outside. I'm not saying that I distrust our exit interview process or our administration. What I'm saying is to be transparent to our community, because they are asking, and they understand the business world too, right? They're asking what is happening over there in Sycamore, and I believe that we need to be able to transparently explain our process, what we have done to show that this is what we've done to make sure that, you know, this is, that these people are leaving our district and here's why, and if we need to make improvements in the future, here's what steps we'll take to do that. And if not, wonderful, that's wonderful.
Right, I think before I would feel comfortable voting for something like that, I need to understand what the cost implication is to the district to do that. Because as a board, we are also we are fiscally responsible for the management of this district. So to put something out there, if this cost $100,000 to do, I mean, I have no idea what it would cost, and you haven't really provided that today. So before we would approve something like that, I think we have a responsibility to understand the fiscal implication of that decision.
I know I've done some research on the top HR services in Cincinnati. There's someone called Gilman Partners. There's plenty of HR experts in Cincinnati that do this type of work regularly for companies. So I don't think that it would be hard to get a quote for something like that, so we could have an understanding of that.
Mr. Comfort, do you mind if I make a comment? Just in regards to,
This is a bit of a board discussion, but please go ahead.
the only comment I have is, before this school year, we did not do exit interviews. So I'm concerned about, you know, we've started doing what I think is a best practice process. And now we're talking about we need an outside agency to conduct that process.
Yeah.
When prior to our leadership team being in place, we did not do exit interviews. So I'm just concerned about the view that gives, that we're doing a best practice, and now doesn't seem appropriate to bring in an outside company to conduct a process that we believe is working.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Lewis. Thank you. In a spirit of trying to find common ground, I do believe that everyone in this room, all board members and everyone in this room wants what's best for this district. I think that's a common ground that we have. For me, I would like to see the results of the exit interviews that are being conducted before I would think to move forward. And to my knowledge, to catch one, that hasn't happened. Maybe we'll find more that are optionally declined, but I would like our internal exit interview process, and I'll reiterate, I completely trust and support Dr. Davis and the interview process that she has established, and I would like to see that information before I would conclude that we need to invest in additional monies. If we have a particular person who has declined the optional interview, we may, and we see something that we would like to explore further after seeing all of the exit interviews, then I would be open-minded to understanding the next step. But I believe at this state, we have not yet looked at the outcome of the exit interviews for the other candidates. And I think we have some more to discuss on this in executive session. Open session, this is a good conversation, but this is more procedural than getting into specifics of personnel. I think some of this conversations needs to be tabled until we have an executive session conversation on personnel. Those are some items we cannot share, as you know, fully in open session.
So you're proposing that we table it. So how does that work? Procedurally?
The process can either be, so we have a motion and a second, we can either vote and then on the motion as it was provided. At that point, you would have to have a majority of those present and voting. So given that you have 4 people here today, you'd have to have a 3-1 vote to move forward. If you want to table your motion, this is better since you made that. We have in the past had the process where since you made the motion, you can withdraw it as long as Dr. Steger says that that's okay. You could just withdraw the motion as well. And I guess maybe thinking that through, what may make you think about how you want to proceed would be, if you want this motion to go forward as is, then I would probably recommend that you table it. If you want to think about how this resolution might be presented in a future time, be it that you would have more information about how you would propose to move forward with this process in more detail, then I would suggest you probably withdraw your motion for further review and bring something back at a future meeting. So your options are go ahead and vote, and you would have to have a majority of those present voting for this particular resolution to move forward. Or you could table it. That would require a motion and a second, and then a vote of the board, and so that would bring it to a future meeting. Or you could withdraw it just by the two of you who made the motion in the second agreeing to that, and that would give you an opportunity to bring it back maybe in a different form. Okay, so is that helpful?
we
Is that
take-
helpful? You have three options.
It's complicated.
If you table it, it's as is.
So if we table it, it'll stay as is, and then when do we have to motion again for it to come back? Or does it just happen the next meeting?
I
or
would,
how does
I
that
would
work?
recommend that if you make the motion to table, it, because I know the two of you are not going to be at the next meeting. So when you make the motion to table it, I would say table it until the August 3rd meeting, so that we can bring that back when the full board is available.
Yep, I think that's,
I'm fine for any of the three outcomes, and it's your choosing, Mr. Chair.
sure, I'm okay with tabling it till the August meeting, if that's deep, or I guess we both have to agree to that, right? Because otherwise.
If you table it, it requires a
A motion,
I'm gonna
motion.
become a
you need
parliamentarian.
to make a motion to table this, and we need a second to table, and then we vote on the table.
Got it.
Yes.
And then if the tabling has 3 votes, then it's tabled. If the tabling has 2 votes,
Yeah.
then we would move forward with a vote on the process. So that's how the process will work.
I guess my question is, would you, as Mrs. Weiss suggested, with more information, would it be better to do a motion with more information involved so that she knows what she needs also for that?
But even if we table it, we can come back with more information. I mean, I guess, is it typical to have all the prices of all the HR
Table it,
experts
you'd be bringing back the same
The same,
resolution. That's why I think perhaps withdrawing it, coming back with a different resolution potentially if you want to.
Or we can vote.
Or would be.
And if we
would
vote,
be
though,
probably most appropriate if you think you want to change what you brought.
And if we vote and then it doesn't go forward, then we just have to redo it in August or whatever.
Correct.
Okay. I think that, it actually, I actually think we should table it, and I think we should wait until August. So I motion that we table it and we bring it back up in August, having had some time to learn more information, understand the process. Maybe I can find more information.
My question is,
That's what I.
Is there a second to the motion to table?
can I ask a question
Yes.
first about that?
Yes.
So if you table it, you understand it has to be exactly as you read it before. There's no more information that goes into it. Does that make sense to you? It has to be exactly how you have written it here.
That's fine. I'm not saying specifically which HR, I'm not saying that we have to use specific HR, I just said HR expert. I think that's something that we could all, I think we could come up with a list of HR experts and have that discussion also, right? It doesn't have to be in the resolution, or does the actual amount needs to be in the resolution?
I would say that at some point, we will have to likely approve a contract with an HR
Okay.
expert. So I guess my question for you would be, right now, there's, with the resolution that you initially proposed, I don't believe that there was any kind of direction of who would be finding this person, any of those things. I mean, there are just a lot of details potentially to work out as proposed, which is potentially a reason that if you're gonna bring it back at a later time, you might want to revise it somewhat so that you outline those types of things
Yeah,
for that
'cause-
resolution. So that might be a reason to withdraw it as opposed to
Because I can take,
tabling it.
I could take the lead of proposing different, and, different experts in Cincinnati that do this type of work and proposing, finding that out, I would do that. Okay, so it sounds like we're gonna need to be able to change it. So then I would need to motion to withdraw it, and I have to re-propose it.
If you're going to withdraw it, all that it takes would be for you and Ms. Dr. Stever to say, we'd like to withdraw the resolution.
And then I just
And then,
re-propose it.
then what you might want to do is just make sure that you have followed up with Mr. Ballant and myself with what you would like to have included on the August 3rd agenda.
I will do that then. All right, I would like to withdraw my motion. Would you be okay with that? Thank you.
And in the spirit, I think we should go through with the exit interviews that we have planned. And I think I would ask on behalf of the board that the results of those exit interviews be shared with the board as they're available. If I could make that request, Mr. Lewis, you're welcome. Thank you. And maybe if any board members have any final statements, I would just like to say, I feel like the candidates that we have brought in to the district, Mr. Porter, but also all the other candidates have, and of the hires that we have had throughout the years have all been incredible leaders. So I'm looking around the room at some of the new leaders that have come in, and I just want to state publicly that I am thrilled with the quality of new leaders that we have in the district. And I personally want to, state that for the record. I think while I'm saddened, I echo Mr. Lewis in the comment that we're sad when leaders go on and take new growth responsibilities. But I think the glass half full is we have the opportunity to bring on new talent in the district, and I'm excited for that opportunity as well.
Very well said, Mr. Comerford. I agree.
Moving on with item, is there any with the other for the superintendent's agenda? Mr. Lewis, is there anything else in other?
I think there's a couple of things worth mentioning, so I appreciate that. June 22nd, the city of Montgomery did a proclamation for our boys tennis team. So June 23rd was Sycamore Aviators 2022 boys tennis team day. And then they proclaimed that June 24th was Lauren Barnes Day. So again, those were, it was a great ceremony. Thank you to the coaches that attended and their work with those student athletes. That's huge. And the amount of time that they spend with those athletes. I know the athletes all talked about their relationships with their coaches. And I would just say that boys tennis team and also Lauren Barnes did a great job just demonstrating why Sycamore is special at the meetings. They spoke at the meeting and shared some stories with the city council of Montgomery. Again, it was a wonderful day to spend with them and an evening to spend with them. And then thank you again to the city of Montgomery for inviting us to be a part of the July 4th parade. Thank you to our maintenance team for setting us up with a trailer and getting us back to our cars in one piece. And I just want to mention as a friend of Sycamore, Jerry Harbison, who's a former council member and also a former mayor of the city of Montgomery, and served on our business advisory council and was always a good friend to the district. And her husband, Mike, is still a good friend to the district, but they erected a statue. So they announced the fundraising campaign for it last year on 4th of July. looking to get around $83,000, and they were able to do that. So there is a bronze statue of her in the park next to the city buildings. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Moving on to the treasurer's agenda, can I have a motion to approve item number 1, the 2022 IRS millage rate revised?
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Weber?
Yes, many of you may have seen that the Internal Revenue Service has increased the reimbursement rate for mileage. Within their guidelines, the district's practice has been to follow the IRS mileage rate for reimbursement. So I recommend that we increase that rate to be in compliance with IRS rules and regulations.
Any questions from the board? Mrs. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Dr. Stever?
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter? Aye. And Mr. Comer?
Aye. Motion passes. Can I have a motion to approve item number 2, agreement from Learn 21 Shared Personnel Services?
So moved.
Second.
I believe it was at our last meeting, we approved a resolution to terminate our agreement or terminate our fiscal agent arrangement with Learn 21. And in past years, we have had also provided personnel for Learn 21. The vast majority of their staff are going to be employed directly by Learn 21 in future years, but we do have one very special person who is still going to be doing a shared service between the district and Learn 21, and that's Mr. Fritz. The recommendation would be that 60% of his time for this upcoming year would continue to be working with Sycamore, a lot of transition services with our new director of technology, as well as some special assignments that we want him to carry out in this next year. And then 40% of his time with Learn 21, and they would reimburse us in full for the cost of that 40%. So with that, I recommend that you approve this shared personnel agreement with Learn 21.
Any questions from the board? Okay, Mrs. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter? Aye. Mr. Comer?
Aye.
Dr. Stever?
Aye.
Okay, moving along, we have a motion to approve the personnel consent agenda, which includes the addendums item 1.1 and 2GG.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Dr. Stever?
Aye.
Mr. Comer?
Aye.
And Mrs. Bitter?
Aye.
Next, we have other Board of Education business. I'd like to ask for a motion to move into executive session in accordance with ORC 121.22G1, employment and compensation of a public employee, official or regulated individual, and in accordance with ORC 121.22G2, purchase of property.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Weber, can you please call the roll?
Dr. Stever?
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter? Aye. And Mr. Comer?
Aye. I'd like to say we're not expecting to take any decisions during the executive session or to return and make any decisions at the end. So thank you. That concludes our public session.